She was an old, frail woman with absolutely no tribe to protect her, yet she stood against the pharaoh of her nation and became the very first soul on earth to give her life for Islam. Welcome to this explainer, guys. Today, we're diving into the legendary story of Sumayyah bint Khayyat. We're talking about a completely marginalized woman whose unbreakable resolve literally altered the trajectory of the early Muslim community.
I mean, really sit with the gravity of that for a second. An unprotected woman standing completely fearless against absolute tyranny, ultimately becoming the first to sacrifice everything for her faith. So, how did that happen? How does someone with zero societal power become the ultimate pioneer? Let's get into it.
Right, to truly grasp the scale of her courage, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to look at her extreme social vulnerability in Meccan society before Islam even entered the picture. Back then, Mecca was a place where your bloodline and your tribe were, well, they were everything. Without them, you were basically invisible.
The odds were, quite literally, entirely stacked against her family. Think about it. Sumayyah was a black woman of Abyssinian descent and a freed slave. Her husband, Yasir, a foreigner from Yemen who came looking for his brother. They lived entirely as clients under the powerful Banu Makhzum clan. They had absolutely no tribal protection of their own, which, in that society, marked them as the weak ones, completely at the mercy of their powerful patrons.
But then, everything shifted. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, began calling people to Islam, Sumayyah's brilliant mind immediately cut through the noise. Despite lacking formal education or elite status, she instantly recognized the profound truth and the flawless logic of the message.
Out of thousands of people in Mecca, this unprotected, marginalized woman had the immense bravery to become the seventh person to publicly embrace the faith. Just let that sink in for a moment. Number 7. Among all the fierce warriors, the wealthy merchants, and the tribal leaders, it was Sumayyah who stepped forward into the light.
It's such a wild contrast, isn't it? To Meccan society, she was a nobody, just a frail outsider. But to Islam, her faith instantly elevated her to the highest ranks of empowerment. She went from being completely marginalized to standing shoulder to shoulder with the absolute greatest early pioneers, folks like Abu Bakr and Khadija. Talk about a paradigm shift.
Well, as the light of Islam grew, so did the absolute rage of the Quraysh. The powerful tribal leaders, especially the tyrant Abu Jahl, were desperate to make an example out of the early Muslims. And who do you think they targeted? Yep, they went straight for Sumayyah and her family, specifically because they were easy targets who lacked that crucial tribal protection we talked about.
What's truly awe-inspiring here is the profound disconnect between her agonizing physical reality and her unshakable spiritual state. Abu Jahl subjected them to horrific extremes. We're talking being dragged into the scorching desert at high noon, being forced into heavy iron mailcoats baking in the sun, severe dehydration. It was brutal. Yet physically broken as she was, her spirit was completely untouched. She just kept remembering God.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, couldn't physically intervene because of the complex social and tribal laws of Mecca at the time. But as he walked past their suffering, enduring the utter heartbreak of seeing his beloved followers tortured, he offered this monumental promise. Be patient, O family of Yasir, for your final destination is paradise. That promise echoed through history and gave them the ultimate fuel to keep going.
Eventually, this relentless, horrific torture reached a breaking point. One evening, after a brutally long period of abuse, the stage was set for the ultimate showdown. It was a standoff between a frail, elderly woman and Abu Jahl, literally the most powerful and ruthless tyrant of Mecca. Under that kind of unbelievable pressure, you really have to wonder, would she break? Abu Jahl mocked her relentlessly. He sank to a new low, actually suggesting she only endured this torture out of some worldly desire to marry the Prophet. He pushed her to her absolute physical and psychological limits, desperate, just desperate, to force her to utter a single word cursing Islam. But barely conscious, battered, and yet completely unbroken, Sumayyah looked up at this towering tyrant and delivered a legendary, crushing insult. She told him he was smaller in her eyes than a beetle on the ground she would step on. Boom. In that single sentence, she proved her spirit was invincible. Abu Jahl had completely, utterly failed to conquer her mind. Enraged beyond all measure by her defiance in his own extremely public humiliation, the tyrant took his spear and struck her down. But you know what? In that horrific moment of violence, Abu Jahl didn't defeat her at all.
He actually just secured her immortal place in eternity. With that fatal blow, she didn't just pass away, her soul ascended, and she became the very first Shahida, the absolute first martyr in all of Islamic history. She achieved this monumental, incredible status even before her husband Yasir, who was martyred shortly after, and way before any of the great warriors of the faith.
Sumayyah never lived to see the glory days of Islam. She never got to witness the great migrations, the establishment of a safe community, or the sweeping victories. But honestly, it didn't matter. Her eternal honor was already sealed forever.
Her incredible legacy firmly cemented her as the Asiya of our Ummah. It's such a powerful parallel, drawing a direct line between her and the righteous wife of Pharaoh, who also totally defied absolute tyranny for her faith.
And this legacy of sacrifice, it only built up across the generations. Her family laid the very foundation of resistance in the 7th year before the Hijrah. Years later, at the Battle of Badr, the Ark of Justice was finally completed when Abu Jahl met his end. And then, decades later, her son, Ammar, who had witnessed his mother's immense bravery firsthand, would also attain martyrdom at Siffin, carrying that invincible spirit forward. Actually, right after the Battle of Badr, the Prophet specifically sought out her surviving son, Ammar. He wanted to personally deliver the news that Abu Jahl had finally been defeated, perfectly honoring the unimaginable sacrifice Sumayyah had made all those years ago.
So what does this all mean for us? The crucial point we have to take away from her life isn't just historical awe. We aren't just looking back in admiration. We are looking for actionable traits. Sumayyah teaches us about unshakable resilience, unyielding determination against crushing societal pressure, and what it truly, deeply means to be a visionary role model for our own families today. I'm going to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. Sumayyah stood in the burning sun and gave her very life in the face of absolute tyranny for what she believed in. So if she could do that, what small, daily comforts, ingrained habits, or social fears are we willing to sacrifice today to stand up for our own principles? It's definitely something we all need to ask ourselves.